The reason to read the novel, the reason to write the novel is so that you can witness the becoming of yourself or witness the becoming of someone else, and maybe, just maybe, get a glimpse into what's inside of you or what's inside of others, because creating something, reading something that someone has created is such an act of humanity, human soul, and you feel connection to someone you may have never met, probably will never meet, and I think it's beautiful. A lot of art has historically been patronage, right? That's where, the Renaissance would not have been possible without the geniuses that were funded by the Medicis, things like that. So one philosophical thing that I like to point to with Bitcoin is that, you return to a sound money system. We have good money. Good money is going to chase good. And so they're going to patron these people who are doing beautiful art, really good painters, really good writers, musicians, things like that. Where that may fail, I worry, is that a lot of these great artists that we love to talk about, who have either great moral or just great artistic, backbones, is because they broke from the mold of what was. Are people who are currently in power, currently rich, on a sound money system, are they going to throw their good money at something experimental that's potentially not going to work? I don't know. That's where I struggle, talk about meditation as a way to get this inner silence. A lot of people use religion as a way to get that inner silence. And a lot of people try to get there through, prayer and sort of this ascetic struggle, right? I'm not saying reading is an ascetic struggle, but you have to work at it. And if you're not someone who's like, hippy dippy meditation stuff, or, religion has, especially in the United States, has this sort of connotation of being, more right leaning. It's like, I'm not religious, I'm an atheist, or, I don't want to do meditation, let's do hippy dippy. Well, you need that inner silence no matter what God you believe or do not believe in. So go read a book.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Think Bitcoin podcast, where I talk to Bitcoiners about big ideas, about art, philosophy, and the humanities. If you've been enjoying the show, please take a second to like the show, to rate the show, and of course, to subscribe to the show. It very much makes a difference and does help bring visibility to the show, so we appreciate it. Today's guest is George Kaloudis. George is a novelist and a short story writer. He was formerly a reporter and opinion writer at CoinDesk. Earlier this year, he published his excellent novel on Sawdust and Broken Glass, which I highly recommend you get a copy of. We talk about writing, creativity, the state of the novel, how Bitcoin may or may not create a better environment for art, why Bitcoiners should read more books that have nothing to do with Bitcoin, why culture thrives when the arts thrive, and much more. So without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with George Kaloudis. All right, we are live. George Kaloudis, welcome to the Think Bitcoin podcast.
Thanks, Logan. Very, very happy to be here. This is great.
Yeah, definitely really excited to talk. You and I, we were just kind of going on before hitting record and decided that we just kind of need to hit the button here. This is going to go on for a long time. You and I have been known each other for a little while. I'm excited to have this conversation because you are kind of like my literature Bitcoin guy. And so this show is, hopefully, giving a good argument to folks of why they should care about books, why they should care about art and literature, and, fixing the money is great, but, we do have other work that needs to be done culturally. So definitely excited to have you here to jump into that.
Yeah. Also, you saying that makes me feel really good, because when I listen to these sort of really smart literary critics talk about literature, they have such a vast knowledge of the history of, this movement, and it kind of gets overwhelming, and I think it's fun to listen to. I'm sure you do too, but I wouldn't say I'm one of those people. I love, jumping around to different kinds of artists and different kinds of writers, and so I'm very glad you think I'm someone you could talk literature with, because I think I would talk to some librarians and just get lost. Because, what's the difference between a modernist and a postmodernist? What's the difference between a satirist and something else? I don't know. It's just, I know when the words are good, when the moral is good, and, all that good stuff. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no, I think you and I are really aligned on exactly what you just articulated there, which is that, for me, and I'm some full disclosure, like I went to school for this stuff, and so like you, I definitely have some familiarity with it. But I think you said it really well. I mean, for me, the litmus test for if I care about it, is really like, does it kind of like hit me like in an interior way first? Like I gotta feel it before my head starts to work. Like my brain is not gonna really care or process. I'll just be distracted if it doesn't kind of hit me more viscerally first, which is not an especially like academically accepted way to do literary criticism. Like that was like that was real feedback that I got when I was in grad school. And school was at like, Logan, you're kind of approaching this it's a little bit too colloquial,
Okay.
that you're kind of, and I was like, well, maybe you guys are doing it wrong. Maybe you guys need to sort of get in touch with, like how it feels first. So, which I think is kind of like an instinct thing. Like you know it when you feel it. I mean, I think David Foster Wallace has the thing where he says like, when it hits, like you feel it in your nerve endings, is how he describes it.
Yeah.
So
Does it sing? I don't, and
yeah,
in the same way that some people don't like, heavy metal music like I do, and some people don't like other kinds of music. I don't know. It just works for me. Maybe it doesn't work for you, but you look at a sentence, you go, "That's a good sentence." And again, this isn't very deep, but or actually, maybe it is very deep. Maybe it is
I
deep.
I think I think it is, and there's some. We could reference some specific sentences of yours in your novel, which maybe we'll get to, that I do think sing. But before we get into all that, George, so I was telling you offline. There's a kind of a new cohort of Bitcoiners, at least that I'm encountering, who are younger, sort of 20, 23, 24, 25 era Bitcoiners, and I would normally say, you are somebody who most listeners would probably know if they'd been around Bitcoin for like 4 years, 5 years. If they'd seen a cycle, they would know who you are. But for the folks who are a little bit newer, can you just kind of introduce yourself? Just like tell us, how you're a little bit about your Bitcoin journey,
Yeah.
how you got here, all the, you've done a lot in the space over the years, and kind of what you're doing now.
And after I go through this, I want to know what it is that you think that makes it so that people should know who I am, because I am not. I don't buy into that, but we'll see. Maybe I need to have a bigger ego. So, like everyone, I heard about Bitcoin before everyone else did, right? My dad is the person who introduced me to Bitcoin, which doesn't really happen. It's usually, the son talking to the father. He was cutting edge, was lending his processing power to NASA. He was on some sort of forum. The forum said, "Hey, check out this Bitcoin project." Went over there, said, "Oh my goodness," he had this libertarian bent, loves sound money, kind of a gold bug in a way. And he goes, "I'm going to do this." Lent the processing power, got all the Bitcoins, mined a couple blocks, lost it all. And I'm not saying that for OPSEC. He will tell you to your face, "Son, I wouldn't be working if I had those blocks still." So, but he told me, and I was 16 years old, "Son, it's going to go to 1 million someday." I'm like, "All right, I'm going to go and play college soccer because that's what I want to do with my life. I'm going to be a soccer player." I should have listened to him and just started working at McDonald's and pouring all the money into Bitcoin. That's neither here nor there. So he introduced me to it. I went to college, went to Davidson College, played soccer, studied math, wanted to make money out of undergrad, went into banking. And when I was in banking, you kind of get exposed to the sort of absurdity of the financial system. And, you get back for your first Thanksgiving with your parents. Oh, the entire financial system's held up by an Excel, a couple Excels here and there, right? That's like, "Son, Bitcoin," right? Like, okay, whatever. Then I start digging into it. I'm working in banking for 3 or 4 years, and COVID hits, and that's when I took the real deep dive, right? We went from being in the office all the time, all this analyst class, maybe 15 of us, grinding late hours, all that good stuff, bad stuff, but good stuff. And I went to doing that alone. That's not conducive for anything good. So I did the deep dive. The Andreas Antonopoulos is the guy who really made it click. I said, "I can't be doing this banking stuff anymore. I need to go do something." And so in 2021, I was lucky enough to get a job at CoinDesk, and CoinDesk being what it once was, which I thought was a very good place to get your crypto related news. I came in as a guy who didn't believe in crypto, but believed in Bitcoin. I was given the opportunity to write research, which kind of was a product that was going to die from the get-go. Don't charge money for research. I don't know how you're going to make money. The team folded, and instead of leaving, I was given the opportunity to become an opinion columnist, which is a very enviable spot to be in. To have not even done any journalism at all, like hitting the pavement, breaking stories, a lot of stuff, and I just have opinions on stuff, I was very, very lucky. And so for 2 years at CoinDesk, 2021 to 2023, I was writing Bitcoin related opinion pieces. What do I think about this? What do I think about that? And I had a pretty solid technical understanding to, introduce people to Bitcoin, talk about certain privacy elements or lack thereof, things like that. And I did that for 2 years. It's a great time. I ended up doing podcasts, live TV. I kind of just filled in wherever was needed because, CoinDesk was sort of a startup and we weren't really making money. And eventually we lost a lot of money and got to the point, got laid off. I got laid off in 2023 and I wrote a book. And then I went back to banking because got bills to pay, mouths to feed, mine mostly. So that's where I am now. I don't know if I kind of went all around, but
that's perfect. Yeah. Like your background is so interesting to me. I mean, I think the reason why I guess to circle back to what you were asking, why some people will definitely know who you are is just because those of us who were kind of around in like 2020, 2021, 2022, I mean, you open CoinDesk like as a regular thing that you do, until you see, oh, this piece by George Kaloudis or, and you were on you were on the podcast, I'm like, what's crazy is, I mean, like, so Peter McCormick, like there's a whole new generation of Bitcoiners who have no idea like who the fuck Peter McCormick even is.
that's
Yeah.
crazy to me.
And it's kind of wild. And just like, it's just not, it used to be that was like the college you graduated from sort of.
Yeah.
And,
That was excited when I got invited to that podcast. I was like, oh, I made it in a way, right?
Same.
Like,
I felt the same way. I was like, I remember telling my wife, like, I'm going to Bedford. Like, this is going to be nuts. Like, this is crazy.
she's like, who's that?
And now it's like, nobody cares.
Yeah. Interesting.
But we're getting just old, I think is the problem.
Good problem.
Yeah. I think there's like a RZA, a line, not that we need to go down this rabbit hole, but I just turned 37. So there's this line, I think it's the RZA who says it, where he's like, there are two types of men in the world, men who are dead and men who are dying. And I'd rather be the latter than the former.
Ooh, hold on.
Which is like, that's like, Wu-Tang forever, I guess. But, anyways, so
I'm writing it down, by the way.
Okay. That's a little gem for the audience. For those of us approaching middle age. But so your background is interesting, George, because you actually, there's so many people who are in the humanities, and like I have friends who are deeply, deeply into this stuff who are completely financially, I mean, I can probably say illiterate. And I don't even mean that pejoratively. I just mean that it has never really sort of, I guess, surfaced to them as a really important or pressing thing that they need to know, or else it seems kind of anathema to the things that they do care about. Where there's this weird kind of false, I guess maybe like invented like opposition that we create, where it's like, oh, if you're into artsy kind of stuff, you also like can't be into finance stuff, which I actually think is complete bullshit. And I'm really into kind of highlighting folks and different situations where that prove that that's ridiculous. But so you have this finance background, kind of a hardcore finance background, but you're also kind of working on you're like writing novels. I mean, where have you always been into writing, into literature, to creating, or when did that kind of start for you?
Yeah, I would say the love for reading is what turned into a love for writing and making stuff in general. And my love of reading is high school, right? Some people, they sit in their first high school English class and Huck Finn comes on their desk, or what book did I particularly love? Or of Mice and Men, Steinbeck's great. Comes on their desk and they're like, oh, I have to read this. And some people just, they love it. And so that, English class I ended up becoming a math major because for reasons, as I say. But the love of reading from high school, I just so happened. I got lucky in a way. I just liked it. It clicked for me. I really liked it. I went to college, went to Davidson College, liberal arts. There's a whole humanities focus. A lot of people, students, my classmates, were critical of the fact that, oh, all the majors we have here, at the time we had, I think, 20 majors or something like that. Oh, none of these are applicable to the real world. It's pure liberal arts, right? You have math, physics, English, chemistry, right? Just, the subjects, as you would call them.
Yeah.
And the one thing that people did that were quote unquote going into business, oh, I'm going to be an economics major. Still, sort of a real line of scientific study, social scientific study, but, kind of touches the real world. And while I was in school, what do you mean this isn't teaching us things about the world? You said David Foster Wallace's name earlier. I hate to talk about what is water, his Kenyan, I think it was Kenyan college, right? Where he did the, he did the commencement speech.
Yeah, so it is Kenyan because I went to Kenyan. So yeah, it's like our.
Wait, was that your speech?
No,
that would have been crazy.
I had Franzen. I had Jonathan Franzen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Was that pretty good? Probably.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. But not to just, steal other people's ideas, but that's sort of what reading and writing is. I learned how to think. It's the stupid thing to say. I learned how to think. I took English classes. I took, this one class where it was writing and in support or against capital punishment, things like that, right? Just getting into the philosophy of this and that. And it was really great. And so while I was in school, I was a math major. I was encouraged to do other things besides just math. So I consider myself very lucky that I ended up going to Davidson, because if I went to maybe another school where the focus was on, getting the finance major, getting the finance job, I wouldn't have maybe nurtured that little spark inside me. And then when I get into my job, where there's some writing, you have these managing directors say, oh, you need to learn how to write well. And I'm writing, PowerPoint slides. And there are times when I wrote, credit memos, and those are so boring, but I was writing crisp, clean sentences. And, the first compliment I got was, oh, you write clearly. Like, great. This is great because I get to write, but it's boring. It was boring. And so while I was, maybe my second or third year of banking is when I said, I'm going to try my hand at a short story. And I have it in my desk, and I will never read it again because it was bad, right? You do the whole exercise of here's the arc, and you try to plan it out. And I'm not someone who can plan out the story and write it. And I tried it and I did it, and it was terrible. It's terrible, but it did something for me, right? And so I kind of nurtured it in the background. It wasn't nurtured at work, but it was nurtured at school. So I think I got really lucky.
Yeah. So I want to start getting into like writing specifically. So you wrote this novel, which is right, folks can see right here. It's called On Sawdust and Broken Glass. You published it earlier this year, I think like early 2025. I know that I read it in August because I have it, like I'm somebody who writes inside of the books when I read them so that I know when that happened, what time in my life. But so this is such a big project to like sit down and just birth this thing out of nothing. Like you're pulling this from, it doesn't exist and then it exists. Like you kind of midwife it into existence. And I want to jump like into the deep end philosophically here for you, because I think a question that a lot of folks would ask, especially younger people, and certainly people in the Bitcoin community too, would say, why write a novel today? We will get into AI stuff too, but like, why? So you sat down and you said, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. Why is that important? Why is the novel important? Understanding we could talk about this for 6 hours.
Yeah. What did Don DeLillo say? The novel is a doomed project. It's not. Well, he said, people say the novel's a doomed project. And I think he received his reward and said, here's proof it's not. Something like that, right? The novel, it's a tough medium, especially these days where people want it quick. Attention spans are getting shorter and getting shorter. I will say, if you need the most recent answer that I've given to this, because I've given the answer to this many times, is that I am finding in my personal life that people are coming to me and saying, my attention span is bad. The social media is just breaking my dopamine receptors, and this is bad. I want to be able to pay attention again. And so I think, to be hopeful, I think people want that, and nothing's better than for the novel for that, especially books. And I'm not saying my book is one of these books, but books that take a little bit of work to get. I see Infinite Jest over on your right shoulder. that book takes. I haven't finished that book, but that book takes work. I think there are people who have the desire to put their nose in a book and do that. More philosophically, why I don't think the novel is dead or dying is because it would be dead by now. I don't know. That's probably a bad answer, but we've had novels since, Don Quixote. I guess that's the first one you'd say with the multiple narrative voices. And we just keep making them. We keep making it. And are these books saying anything new? Maybe some are saying some new stuff, but we have to say the old stuff in new ways. Borges says it's a mistake to assume that every word in the dictionary can be used, and you don't write with a dictionary. You're writing with this language, and I'm trying to think of the word, language of conversation, right? This intimate thing where I might say again and again, and someone in the next generation before me is going to write a book that talks about being true to yourself. And it's that stupid, corny thing that everyone always says to you. And the reason they're saying it to you, and the reason it's a platitude, is because it is true. And so if you are going to write, this is my long-winded way of saying, the reason to write the novel is not to make money, because Lord knows there are so many books out there and a lot of them are bad, and a lot of the good ones don't sell until way later. Author dies and maybe, oh, this guy was a genius, or they win a Nobel Prize all of a sudden. You're, oh, maybe they'll make some money now. The reason to read the novel, the reason to write the novel is so that you can witness the becoming of yourself or witness the becoming of someone else, and maybe, just maybe, get a glimpse into what's inside of you or what's inside of others. It's just stupid artsy answer on its face, but it's not. It really isn't, because creating something, reading something that someone has created, is such an act of humanity, human soul, and you feel connection to someone you may have never met, probably will never meet, and I think it's beautiful. And again, I can go less artsy if you want me to, but that's my true answer today.
No, I think there's so much there that I want to touch on, and I've used the attention thing. I think about that a lot myself too, and I think that's right. I do think that there are a lot of people now who are realizing, I guess, on a profound level, how much our brains have been basically hijacked by our environments. We do live in kind of like an addiction economy, like an attention addiction economy, and so I completely agree that it's a pretty good prescription to give somebody, I think, who's looking to work on their attention span a little bit, to say, well, just sit down and read a novel. Because first of all, you have to sit down for like 20 minutes by yourself in silence, preferably.
Yeah.
Which drives some people. I mean, that's sort of like a threshold issue for a lot of people now who are so used to background everything and are feeling the need to kind of grab their phone and look at stuff and check stuff and get whatever dopamine hit. So I do think that's like, I think that's a good kind of like intro way to sort of pique somebody's interest in literature now and make it pretty salient and like understandable, like why it could be almost like utilitarianly useful, I guess.
Yeah.
In the sense that if you're looking for kind of like a self-improvement angle, that I think is a very good one for folks who are, but I think what you said about, and you kind of like did this, I guess, this pyramid where you were sort of saying, okay, here's like the ground level one for those people, and then we'll kind of just go higher. The Borges thing about, I think it was Borges, you were saying, tell the old things in new ways. Yeah, for me, I do think like we are culturally, it seems like getting to a place where we're sort of giving less and less space to explore our humanity. Things are just getting like less and less human. I mean, most of the internet is not human. We spend all day doing like non-human interactions, really. Even this interaction, like you and I are not like beside each other, having coffee together, like we're virtually doing this. And I think literature is kind of a way to explore, to kind of like connect, I guess, your humanity with that of somebody else's through this kind of like negative capability experience that you have. And I think when we are losing touch with what makes us human, it's kind of increasingly important to put yourself in positions where you are feeling that vicariously and you're exploring that in yourself, like you said. So, I mean, I would argue for people, like, if you want to be a sane person in the future, you should probably be doing some of this. You should be reading a little bit. But I don't know if you would agree with that. But yeah, we're kind of dancing. I mean, there's a lot of actually. I mean, the way you were described, there's a lot of like David Foster Wallace
Yeah.
philosophy behind what we're both saying, I think.
Yeah, I think he talks about how you go to a coffee shop, and what are they doing? They're piping in music. And I think I'm trying to remember. He says it could be good. It might actually be good, but you can't just sit in this silence. And I think what I thought about when you were talking about this, need to be always on, and you have to go sit in a dark corner and read for 20 minutes. A lot of people, talk about meditation as a way to like get this inner silence. A lot of people use religion as a way to get that inner silence. And there's this, I'm Greek Orthodox as well. And there's this concept in, Greek philosophy and in the sort of in the Greek Orthodox faith of ησυχία or cheskia, if you want to do the Americanized term, the English-sized term. And it's the soul of stillness. And a lot of people try to get there through, prayer and sort of this ascetic struggle, right? I'm not saying reading is an ascetic struggle, but you have to work at it. And if you're not someone who's like, oh, hippy dippy meditation stuff, or, religion has, especially in the United States, has this sort of connotation of being, more right leaning. It's like, oh, I'm not religious, I'm an atheist, or, I don't want to do meditation, let's do hippy dippy. Well, you need that inner silence no matter what God you believe or do not believe in. So go read a book.
Yeah, I think that's that for sure. I think it's good to frame it as kind of like a practice that you do versus we're so used to, I guess, entertainment. Like it's I do think there's a difference between. Do you think there's a difference between entertainment and art? Like maybe we should jump there first.
They like kind of sit beside each other though, don't
Yeah,
they?
it's a little uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. Am I someone who cares very much about Harry Potter? No. If it gets someone into reading, this is the anti-Harold Bloom argument, right? Harold Bloom says they're terrible, no one should read them. But if someone who's, okay, I need to read some books, I need to get away from my phone, they open Harry Potter, they read Harry Potter, and a gateway drugs them over to, I'm more of a Lord of the Rings guy, right? Tolkien's far and away, they're different animals. I know they get put together in our world now, but they're, I think, completely different animals. That's great. If they don't do that and, they start reading, these, there's a term for, those books that you go to the bookstore and they're bright pink, bright yellow, bright blue, and they all look like the same book and they're all written in the present tense and they kind of have the same, arc. You have tropes. Like, is it a book or is it 3 tropes in a trench coat, right?
Yeah.
Is that a problem? I don't know. Like the snooty, uppity me would say, yeah, but they kind of sit beside each other because, I know people that read, we're all thinking romantasy right now, but then they also, they'll read Toni Morrison. I don't know how big that overlap is. I don't know. I want to ask you what you think because I struggle with it, right? As someone who likes reading the big books,
Yeah, I struggle with it too because I think it can be both. I actually think the holy grail is to kind of be both. So like Dostoevsky, I think, is a fairly good example of somebody who writes stories with plots that can be kind of, I mean, what's more of like a ripping plot than Crime and Punishment? I mean, that's like pretty, it's
about crime and punishment. Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, there's a murder, there's like the guy's freaking out, like, but it's also kind of really, there's something else going on. There's some other, I guess, undertaking in the book that's not just meant to merely, I think like mere entertainment is where maybe the separation exists, where it becomes more of like a product or commodity. But I still think it's a little bit difficult to, this is a conversation I have with my wife all the time. We're kind of talking about this. But yeah, it is really hard. But I think there's also ways that you can read what are kind of great books at a level that are, the reason why, to take it back to why I think it's good to frame it as a practice is because if you as maybe the difference between entertainment and art is art, you are actually participating in it a little bit in the construction of meaning that you're getting from it. You were bringing something to it, versus entertainment. You're just receiving it. Like it's more like passive. So like, and you can read, so Huck Finn's a good example. So you can read Huck Finn and just kind of passively receive it. You're not going to get maybe everything you could get from it. You're going to just you'll be able to map out the plot points. But for me, I love Huck Finn. People get a little. It's sort of like some people think it's controversial, but I mean, for me, the big lesson from Huck Finn is the river is experience, right? So he learns not from the people on the shore. He learns from experience, and he and Jim build this friendship um, by going down the river. He learns that a lot of what he learned on shore is actually wrong. Those people who told him X, Y, and Z um, about life, who were kind of his teachers and surrogate parents on the shore, they're incorrect. And he learned the corrective for him was being actually on the river. Experience taught him, and it completely changes his relationship with Jim. And there's also the whole like the birth of American literature. There's the
Yeah.
thieves who were like like kind of bastardizing Shakespeare, just ripping it up, which is sort of I think like America starting over. We're ripping up England. Like their literary traditions, we're trying to build something new. But you can take levels, and I think it's if you treat it like a practice, you're getting more than just the mere entertainment of like, oh, okay, this is a story about a kid. His father's a jerk, and he sort of like runs away and ends up on a river, and it's sort of like a bunch of misadventures that are also adventures
Yeah.
type of a deal.
Have you seen Easy A, the movie Easy A?
I don't think so.
I've seen it like
Um,
100 times. It's kind of a ripoff of the Scarlet Letter, but at the end, one of the guys runs off with a big hulking black guy, and that's the joke is that it's the Huck Finn, and they're watching the Huck Finn movie. It's just you can still get entertainment out of it, right? It could just be as simple as that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love that.
But yeah. I guess I would say the difference is what you bring to it.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you'd
that's
agree with that.
no, yeah. And I was reading something the other day about how, and I'm going to go into shows now because everyone watches shows, right? That's like the third thing that people, what are you watching? What are you watching these days, right? Just the small talk, and everyone has to have a show. And I was reading something about how they're changing the cadence of how, or they want writers' rooms to change the cadence on how they write because people are looking at their phones while they're watching. And to sort of, being a contrarian that me and my wife are, we're like, let's watch the Twilight Zone, right? We watched episode Twilight Zone the other day, and it's almost jarring how slow it is, and the
Yeah,
panic, even the panning is slow, and there's silence, and the guy says something, and sort of what I'm getting at there is that you have some shows. I can't even, let me think of a show. Well, there are some shows where there is nothing here except pure entertainment. There's no moral. Maybe recently we watched The Pit, which is that ER show, and there's entertainment, and people come in and it's like, oh, it's crazy, and there are funny interactions between characters, but there's like a broader moral here is that people should get healthcare. It's a human right. The lead doctor is like fighting off big business. There's a moral there. Great. And then I love House so much, but House is like, let's cure this guy, and some guy breaks some laws and cures a guy, which maybe the moral's there, but it's less obvious, and you can watch it straight up and just be like, good episode,
yeah.
House, like well done, right? So I think that kind of aligns with
Do you
what you're
think some of
saying.
it is too like this is kind of a question I was going to ask you later, but some of it I think is that the really kind of good stuff too, there's a little bit of ambivalence in it because humans are messy as well, and there's almost like no such thing as a clean moral per se, and maybe the stuff that is trying to sort of skip ahead to like a clean moral um, just feels like less of an experience because and I would argue your book is a pretty good example of that too. I mean, there's a lot of complicated feel and sort of yeah, there's a lot of inner conflict in the
Yeah,
characters, and nothing is really clean. I think the characters are kind of seeking a little bit of I guess order and coherence, but there's the thing about life. To quote, I guess one of the characters from Jean Renoir's "The Rules of the Game" film is the thing about life is that everybody has their reasons, and you're just not going to understand them, and that's just makes people uncomfortable. I think they want these like clean narratives where you have a clean beginning and a clean end, and oh, this is what I was supposed to get from that.
yeah.
Um,
And that's how you make a flat story that no one actually resonates with, right?
yeah,
Frodo walked with no issues all the way to Mordor and was never tempted by the ring once. What's the point? Like, what's the point? Um, you can't connect with him. You can't connect with maybe you're a Samwise in your life, So think you say it well. I think you say it well. It's great.
Wait, thank you. I want to, so we are going to get into your book. I want to ask you first, like, to bring Bitcoin back into it, do you think, that Bitcoin, I guess, what's the bull case for Bitcoin potentially creating a better environment for the arts? That's something I think about a lot. That's kind of part of the reason why I wanted to have conversations, have this show, is to talk about the ways in which it's possible, perhaps, for Bitcoin to create a better environment for creators. And I think this also gets forgotten in the mix, also create a better environment for the audience, for people who want to like receive art. How do you think about that? Do you think that's crazy, or do you think that's possible?
I struggle with it because we were just talking about, the clean moral story, but the clean philosophical story, right? In theory, a lot of art has historically been patronage, right? That's where, the Renaissance would not have been possible without the geniuses that were funded by the Medicis, things like that. And so one philosophical thing that I like to point to with Bitcoin is that, you return to a sound money system. We have good money. Good money is going to chase good. And so they're going to patron these people who are doing beautiful art, really good painters, really good writers, musicians, things like that. Where that may fail, I worry, is that a lot of these great artists that we love to talk about who have either great moral or just great artistic, backbones, is because they broke from the mold of what was. Uh, I don't know much about architecture, but I do know who Frank Lloyd Wright is. Part of the reason people know who he is because his stuff is really, really cool, but he was breaking from the norm. Are people who are currently in power, currently rich, on a sound money system, are they going to throw their good money at something experimental that's potentially not going to work? I don't know. That's where I struggle to understand why a sound money system is any different than a fiat money system. In fact, you could flip it on its head. A fiat money system might be better. Like, whatever, this money's funny money anyway. I might as well throw it at this idiot who's writing this kind of off the wall stuff, and maybe it works. Oh,
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Because I completely agree. It's definitely not a given. I like to be optimistic about it, but I totally agree with you that for me, I guess, to put it really, really bluntly, and I just, forgive me, audience, for being a little snobby here too, but it's also possible that you could have the would be patrons of the arts, if they just have like dog shit taste. And that, I mean, let's be real. I mean, like, if you are like an OG, I mean, I'm not suggesting that like OG Bitcoiners necessarily have bad taste. Some of them, I'm sure, have excellent taste. But let's just say, hypothetically, let's just like create like a stereotypical Bitcoin here. If you think that Ayn Rand is like the greatest novelist in the world, I'm not like especially confident that like the art that you're going to patronize with your uh, with your Bitcoin wealth is going to be this kind of generational you know lasting sort of paragon of beauty, that people kind of like that sort of associate with sound money. So that's I think where, and that's not to necessarily, yeah, I'm probably being a little bit unfair to those people, but I also think it's important to kind of like just press on them a little bit. And part of the show is like, I want to suggest, and I don't think the other side of I don't think going to the other extreme of, the most, I guess, like PC type of like hyper workshopped, like novel that feels like a group project,
yeah.
is good either. I don't. I actually probably lean a little Harold Bloom-ish, I would
Yeah.
say, in terms of like there is like a such thing as like a really great novel. It's not just like this 100% subjective thing. But I don't know if you think I'm being unfair there, or not.
No,
But
I think you're kind of hitting exactly another thing I'm worried about too. So I hear that, like, the tastemakers, whatever you say about them now, but the tastemakers are tastemakers for a reason. They got good taste, and maybe they don't. Or maybe these Bitcoiners don't, especially the wealthy ones that have the money to give away. And let's also not. I bring up the Medicis as Renaissance is the easiest example. It's first thing comes ahead. Political powerhouses, right? They weren't doing it necessarily for the love of art. Sure, maybe a sliver of it, but they were doing it to maintain their power, their influence on Florence or wider Italy, whatever it was. So I hate saying this, because we like to see good in all people, but there's another reason that these people were doing that. And there's maybe a reason why someone is funding a certain artist. Some people do it because they just love art. Maybe the Sundance Kid is a guy who's, I love art. And, I don't know the Medicis very well, but, there's a little bit of political say there. I will say, to kind of go off, because I think that's the most concrete one, the patronage aspect of it that I think a lot of people point to. There is this less solid philosophical idea that, and I don't know who really pushes this in the Bitcoin space, but I think it's kind of nonsensical, but it's fun to talk about, is that when people start understanding proof of work and, sound money and things like that, that they're all of a sudden, it's going to go hand in hand with this appreciation of, page by page by page. Like, this person abandoned the idea that they were ever going to finish a 400-page book. They put page by page, and all of a sudden you have 400 pages, and you surprise yourself. That's a Steinbeck quote that I kind of bastardized. Maybe people will have appreciation for that. They talk about the cathedral, right? A cathedral is built across generations, not just in, 10 years. Maybe society, because of Bitcoin, will have this appreciation. I'm not so sure.
No, I think that's interesting, because I do think there's this kind of this like belief that like Bitcoin inspires a low time preference in your life. And so therefore, and I think there's a big leap in the therefore part of that. But therefore, the idea goes, every aspect of your life then becomes a low time preference informed, I guess, activity. And so, you've embraced low time preference in the money that you save in. Therefore, you will now be reading Don Quixote and doing, and like immediately, because you've just decided everything else is a high time preference. Like TikTok is high. I mean, it is, but now I'm just going to jump right from that to to Don Quixote or something, which I don't think is necessarily true. But again, that's kind of like why I want to have these conversations, is because I do think, like, look, if we are gonna get there, there just needs to be like discourse, I think, about what that looks like. Like, how can we start to plant some seeds here culturally, and start to get it into people's minds that, this isn't going to be some like clean leap where you just snap your fingers, you save in Bitcoin, and you become like, a person who I guess cares deeply about the humanities.
But maybe a little part of you does. So
yeah, I think it's possible a little part of you does. Yeah.
Yeah. You bringing up time preference actually reminds me of what I think is kind of a good way to think about this is, and I'm tying it back to my finance job. They talk about the time value of money, right? Companies have value because $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. When people make purchasing decisions every day, like they go to the gas station, they're not pulling out their financial calculator, figuring out what their risk-free rate of return is, what the interest rate is, blah, 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 and getting to, I should only get this much gas at this price. It's one of those things, works in theory. Time value money works in theory. Yeah. You might have parts of your life that you do think about like that, specifically when you invest for retirement. Sure. When you buy a house. Sure. When I'm buying day-to-day things, when I'm just, walking around, am I thinking high time preference or low time preference? Depends what we're talking about. So,
yeah. No, I think that's a good example. I guess maybe the strongest like argument that I think Bitcoin can create a better environment, for me at least, is I think the audience gets ignored a lot. And I guess what I think happens in fiat is I do think we are all kind of increasingly on hamster wheels, and everything is financialized. And so I think in like a totally hyper financialized society where the market economy has kind of penetrated everything. And there's this Lewis Hyde quote that I probably mention in literally every episode of the show, but he has this, his book's back here somewhere too, The Gift. But he talks about how art can exist. It exists a little uncomfortably in a market economy and in a gift economy. It can survive without a market economy, but without a gift economy, it doesn't. It cannot exist. And so, and he means like gift is in like the creator is receiving a gift. That's how kind of art gets made. There's lots of artists will describe their inspirations like, I don't know, it just kind of came to me. I don't know, just there's some part of that, some component of that. And then but the audience also has to have the capacity to kind of receive a little bit of that in that way. And so I think the idea that fiat culture is kind of just like boxed out the gift economy entirely, because people just don't have the space bandwidth. Like if you have kids, you have multiple jobs, you're trying to keep everything together. The prospect of like sitting down and reading a novel and like, doing the work or whatever, the stuff we're just talking, people are gonna look at us and be like, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
Like I'm literally just trying to make dinner here. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to
Who
make
has
sure
time
my
for
kids
that?
do it. Yeah. And so I think the argument that but I think they feel that way, I think because the economy is just hyper financialized, and like the market is going into like every corner of existence of human endeavor. And so maybe the bull case is Bitcoin sucks some of that out. Hopefully, I think this is a long-term thing, but over decades, Bitcoin demonetizes some of these things that have been sort of hastily and artificially monetized because of the exigencies of fiat. And hopefully over time that starts to create an audience that feels like I can breathe a little bit here. And now maybe we can start to think about stuff. But even then, you still have to like, you know, not read bad things.
Yeah. I have
So
nothing to add to that. I think that's great. I think it's a great way to
yeah.
think about it
And
because snooty, right? We're on a podcast.
yeah, we can be that. I think it's fair game. Look, I think that there's actually, I will go on record and say, especially in the Bitcoin community, there is not enough snootiness about, um, there's a lot of snootiness. It's just not, there's none about this kind of stuff, about like the humanities. So there's a lot of snootiness about, finance stuff and like who's more cypherpunk than whom, and who's more into privacy tools or whatever.
Ooh,
But
pertinent.
which is all great. But again, I am here for all these things. But I do think we need to level up our snootiness on this side of the table as well. So I don't know. I want to talk about your book a little bit too. So again, for folks over there over my shoulder, on Sawdust and Broken Glass, is that a Vonnegut quote? What's the
It is. It is. I have it sitting beside me too, so I could read it.
read us the
So
quote for the title.
it comes from, so Kurt Vonnegut is, for all the young men listening right now, between the ages of 18 to 25, you're going to have this internal thing and societal pressure, which convinces you that you can only read nonfiction, and it is a mistake I made. Don't fall into that trap. All nonfiction books are 200 pages too long. They say what they mean in the first 50 pages. Go read fiction. You'll learn more about the world and yourself. That's just that. Kurt Vonnegut is the one who got me back, right? He pulled me back. Everyone reads Slaughterhouse-Five first, read Slaughterhouse-Five, liked it, which is, I guess, a hot take. Cat's Cradle, loved it. Science Tide, loved it. I hit after hit after hit, and I felt like he was talking to me, right? And so I've read pretty much everything, and he has a book, Breakfast of Champions, and in Breakfast of Champions, it's right at the beginnings. It's a book he wrote for his 50th birthday. It's one of those books where when you're an established author, you tell the publisher, I'm giving you this, you're going to publish it, people are going to buy it. It's kind of how it works. And so it's kind of this absurd novel. It has, if you haven't read all his other books, you're confused because there's characters from every book. He doesn't explain them. He just brings them in, right? It's completely ridiculous. And at one point, he has this recurring character, Kilgore Trout, which he uses as, which I think is kind of cool. It's a really long-winded way to say of where I got this inspiration from. Kilgore Trout is a character where Vonnegut says that I have 300 ideas about science fiction books and, these quirky little morals that you could get out of there, but I don't have time to write 300 books. And so you create a character who has written these books. It's like, oh, it's a book about this that Kilgore Trout wrote. And at one point, craziness is happening. The world's falling apart. And someone asks Kilgore Trout to save them, save the world, save our soul, save, this world is crazy. And what he says is, we've tried to survive so long on money and sex and envy and real estate and football and basketball and automobiles and television and alcohol. M dash on Sawdust and Broken Glass. For all the LLM people who think you found it there, this book was written in the 70s. LLMs didn't exist, but the fact that I read that, I was on a plane, it was 2000, whatever it was, 20 something. This is still relevant 50 years later. We're trying to survive on, we're talking about money this whole time. Everyone knows sex sells, envy, real estate, football, basketball. Those are the two sports I watched yesterday, automobiles, television, alcohol on Sawdust and broken glass. And so I read that. I was in the middle of sort of thinking about, sorry, I had read that before. I was in the middle of writing this book. I was trying to figure out what it was really about. It was tentatively titled Sawdust. And I was just reading a Vonnegut, and this came to mind, opened the book. It was right there. And so that's where the title comes from. And
Love that.
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's such an awesome. I mean, that is. So I mean, it's been a long time since I read Breakfast of Champions, and I should probably reread it. I mean,
Absurd book. Great.
yeah, It's
Absurd.
been a long time since I've read Vonnegut, but yeah, I love the title of the book, and that quote is so good. And I just think, like, as an aside, for people, if you're again wondering why you should read literature, you get a line like that, and that just kind of like lives in your brain. It's kind of like food, and you're sort of walking around with it in your head and bouncing it around, and kind of getting meaning from it. But so you wrote this book. This book, man, what could I say? I mean, there's a lot we could say about it. It's about fathers. It's about sons. And man, do I love a father-son story. And which I think is unfair is to say that it's a father-son, because I actually view it more as kind of like a family story. There's a lot of like stuff about inheritance, not like literally monetary inheritance, but like inherited trauma, inherited baggage, and people trying to sort of cross generationally heal themselves, sort of by accidentally inflicting things on other generations. And which is why you and I have had an offline chat before about how I said, look, this kind of reminds me of Friends in a little bit, because of the way you're telling this family story. But it's a story about fathers, sons, families, generational trauma, generational baggage. Like, when did you talk to me about your creative process? Like, how did you start? What was the seed? What did you begin with? And what kind of like sent you down this road where you're like, I got something here?
So the seed, I know I had my whole aside about don't read nonfiction or don't fall into the trap of only reading nonfiction, young men. But when I was at CoinDesk, I thought of this idea for a nonfiction book. And it is actually sort of related to Bitcoin. So I think it's actually really relevant for the show. And I've always thought about how public companies have this mandate to grow forever and ever and ever and ever. And setting aside, my wife works in sustainability related stuff, setting aside the ecological impact, I'm not even talking about that. I think that creates a terrible environment for just businesses in general. And I think a lot of blue collar businesses feel that, like, I make this every year, I do this to many clients, and blah, blah, blah. And then you have private equity coming in, they're trying to grow it forever. And I thought I could find out a way to empirically test that and say, actually, we should go back to a sound money standard and not have infinite growth and just, fix the money, fix the world. And you start researching, you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I thought, well, who are the kind of people that I think subscribe to this idea of infinite growth? It's the people I work with in finance. Who are these people that don't necessarily, like, enough is enough, right? I have enough. Some of the plumbers I know, electricians, restaurant owners that I know, my family owns a restaurant, things like that. Like, okay, let's just pull this back. If I think that this ideology of infinite growth is going to lead to some disaster, which I think it might, who's going to get hurt in this economic disaster? Well, maybe a family business. Well, what if that family business was a blue collar business, and I live in North Carolina, somewhere in North Carolina? What are the businesses in North Carolina? This is how the process goes. A sawmill's kind of cool. I don't know anything about sawmills. I kind of built America. I'm going to learn a little bit about sawmills. Why don't we have a sawmill in North Carolina that the father runs, and things happen, the economy breaks. He's been through so many economic downturns. His son wants to get in there. And so it turned in from this nonfiction book, like, wait, this is way more interesting. The thing that's more interesting is not the fact that I may be trying to tell you, hey, infinite growth is bad, it's going to break the economy eventually, but a story about a father and son, it's going to hit you here, right? And a story about uncles and mothers. And it's like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And then what I said earlier about CoinDesk, got laid off. I'm like, I got some time. Let's dive into this.
Yeah. I love what you said, because like you just exemplified what we talked about earlier, which is that it would be a boring book if what you set out to do was to have the reader take away this moral, quote unquote moral, that like infinite growth is bad. If it was like a thinly disguised like sort of, I guess, if it was like overtly didactic, I guess, in that way, um, it would be boring. There would be no conflict really, but that's not that's like that is not really what you set out to do. You set out to tell a human story that kind of involves that, but that is complicated because there are humans involved, that invites the reader to think, I guess, about like the human cost of our economic theories about the world, about multiple different economic theories of the world, how that affects real, round, developed sort of like human beings and characters, um, versus these kind of just like, I guess, two-dimensional paper, kind of just monoliths or like straw men,
Yeah.
which is, yeah, which I think is just makes for an immensely more interesting book.
Yeah. And you mentioned the economic theories, and I kind of, I touch on them, of course. Like I think I have what I learned at Coindesk is I have the skill to be able to explain that to pretty much anyone if you want to put a little work in. But you can kind of skip over those parts and still get, I think, the human story of this father and son, and to kind of nail in what the story is actually about. We have a father, his name's Callum. He goes to college. His father owns a sawmill. He graduates. He's going to graduate college. He's going to go to Chicago. He's going to work this job. His father dies, so he runs the sawmill. Fast forward, his son, Liam, he goes to Harvard. In no way he's running a sawmill. The son wants to run the sawmill. It's modern times. That's the conflict that happens.
Yeah, and
Whatever ensues is whatever ensues.
and it's all kind of happening against the backdrop, like the great financial crisis is in there, and plays like a pretty prominent role in how everybody's thinking about things. Do you? When I was reading the book, I was like, I assumed that you had some background, maybe in your family, that somebody worked in a sawmill, because I actually thought you were writing about the sawmill really, really well. I was convinced,
Appreciate it.
like I was like, oh wow, like George must have a sawmill connection here, some ways, but
I have a sawmill connection through my wife's family. They had a family sawmill,
gotcha, okay.
but there's a little bit of, not consternation, but it's a family business and there's things with family businesses. And so I didn't actually go to my uncle-in-law, I guess I'd call him, to talk to him about this.
Mhm.
I did the whole, I'm inspired by Cormac McCarthy in The Crossing, where there's this entire scene where holistic Mexican medicine is used to help the main character like not die. And apparently, the story goes, Cormac McCarthy spent weeks on weeks researching just so he can get this 2-page description accurate. I wouldn't care if he got it right or not, but he did the work. Like, I'm going to spend, again, I was unemployed, right? Let's just be clear here. I'm going to watch 1,000 YouTube videos. I'm going to read the books. And, that's for, there was 5 or 6 pages that I thought kind of replicated what I read. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I think
if there's a sawmill guy out there, he might read it and say,
yeah,
well,
he might check us on that. Yeah, that's he might do some proof of work on that himself and let us know. But so I'm glad you gave folks kind of an overview of what the novel is about, and so we can just talk a little bit more in detail about it. You made a few narrative decisions in here, structural decisions that I just thought were super interesting. One is you mentioned in your overview that not only is this story about fathers and sons, it's also about uncles. And it expands. It's a whole family. So for readers, if you read The Corrections, for example, by Jonathan Franzen, like you will like this book. I think if you like Tolstoy, you'll like this book. Like if you like people who tell family, like these rich family stories where there's just drama, like I don't mean drama like soap opera drama. I mean like the tough, like the gritty stuff that, tears families up, spits them out, kind of reconstitutes them again, that type of stuff. But so there's a prominent uncle in this book, and you make the decision very early on. There's an important. I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a very important act that that is hinted at in the beginning of the book that the uncle, did, I guess, at one point, I guess, in the narrative arc, and it drives a lot of the action, right? So there's a lot of the action sort of can be traced back to, if you go kind of back far enough, there's this thing with the uncle creates some drama with the father, Callum, which leads to drama with the son, but you kind of hint at it early on that there's this thing that happened. We don't actually hear about it though. We don't ever, I actually got to near the end of the book and I was like, oh, I'm never actually going to figure this out. And I was trying to think of what's George trying to do by, kind of leaving me hanging a little bit on this. Um, but then you actually do decide to bring it all the way back full circle, and the book kind of ends by, at least in part, by kind of explaining how that happened, and then which I guess kind of like links a lot of the trauma of the family together, and you kind of get that, and you're like, oh, okay. Um, that d- was that a structure? Was that an intentional decision structurally to say, I'm going to lay this breadcrumb out here, and I'm intentionally not going to give you the whole meal until the end?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because I think some people have read the book and they said, "Wait, who is this character?" I forget this character because I fell into the trap, maybe. If I trust my reader, I'm trusting that they read the sentences about said uncle. There's some, yeah, this seems kind of confusing. Why don't I know? This seems something's not adding up here. And then it kind of comes full circle and very artsy of me. The reason I made that decision is that in families, there is almost always some sort of this unspoken thing that maybe happened a generation before that, whatever it may be, some big thing that never got handled, just got buried deep down, and everyone just kind of went on. And then kids came into the picture, and then the grandkids, and whatever. And there's like the family curse or the big family story. And I have uncles. I'm Greek, so I have, these uncles who aren't uncles, cousins who aren't cousins. And some uncles who are not uncles don't like aunts who are not aunts. And I don't know why. And there's something there. And, you find out later it's something stupid, but sometimes you find out it's something real, like someone, stole money from another. And it's, wow, like I would also be mad at that person, but I've seen them in situations where, they rise to the occasion because unfortunately, that's kind of how family works sometimes. And so I buried that in there to be like, maybe as a way for some hope, where if you're in a family where something has happened before that might be in a way unforgivable, to quote what happens to quote one of the characters in the books, like, shitty as it sounds, nothing is unforgivable. It's up to the person forgiving, of course, but nothing is unforgivable. And like we talk about Christianity a little bit, it's like Jesus Christ forgave the people who killed him. I'm not trying to be religious here, but that is crazy. So I buried that in there in an artsy way to be like, hey, this could be you. This could be your family. Like, no one's perfect. Because even though there's family conflict that's very obvious in your face here, I think it's very obvious in your face. It's like, oh, this makes sense. Of course this person doesn't like this person. And introducing the mystery, I think, makes it more real. Like, oh, my uncle and my dad have had some issues in the past, and this is the issue.
Yeah, I love that, because I mean, you're making me think of, it makes a lot of sense structurally the way you did it when you think about, like you were saying, with families. I think with families, there's a lot of storytelling that happens within narrative construction in family. Like you're kind of always creating the narrative of your family, um, and it's a narrative that can be kind of fluid, but there can also be like almost like a ritualized, like intentional forgetting of things, where you're all kind of, I guess, without saying, it's like a tacit agreement collectively that we are going to forget this thing, because we don't want to deal with it, so we're going to push it out. But the book
No one
also kind of,
apologizes to anyone either.
right,
It's just like,
it's just like it's like a blank, it's an open space, basically. It's a hole in, I guess, the storytelling. It's a hole in kind of like the coherence, I guess, of the story of a family. Um, and by structuring the book that way, I think it's hopeful at the end, because you're kind of showing that, like, you can always retell this story. Like you can always, and I guess in storytelling, you're always trying to, I'm just riffing now, but I mean, in storytelling, you're always, I guess, trying to get closer to the truth of things. And I think, like, you can always be telling that story of your family and trying to get closer and closer to your, just these concentric circles to the truth of, the deep kind of like human stuff there, or the, I don't know if that makes sense the way I described it, but
it
that's
does.
kind of how I think it's just, you can constantly be doing that.
Yeah. And I'm doing that now with, my grandmother's getting older. I still have a grandmother, which is great. Not many people in their 30s can say that. And she is an immigrant from Greece. She lived up in the village, man. And she says things, you go, what do you mean? Like, you worked rented land up in the mountains of Greece? These are things like, I didn't think my grandmother was a serf. Like, these are things that, again, that's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. I'm like, oh, I'm rediscovering she's the reason she left. Been told like, oh, opportunity, but like, from what? So it's cool to, I'm kind of
Yeah.
discovering that now. And yeah, you're saying
Did
the right
you
stuff. I agree with you.
do you feel like when you were writing this book, did you feel like you learned anything about family by writing it? Did the process itself illuminate anything for you or get you thinking about anything differently?
Yeah. In a in a pretty selfish way where I'm going to sound like I'm so great, but writing about wounds, familial wounds, especially, and thinking about them deeply and then putting words to that of these characters who are reflections of people in my life. I've I've maybe found a way to forgive some people without them asking for it, maybe to a fault. I sound so great, but I've had some things in my family, and I think I've found a way to deal with them sort of by myself, which is a really selfish thing to do, right? Like, you hurt me, I'm cool with it because I've written this book. Those specific things aren't in there, but thinking about what does it feel like when something happens, I'm able to kind of patch it up myself just by writing about it.
Yeah, what do you think it is uniquely about literature that like allows that process to happen? Because I do think that's kind of a special thing where if you had not written the book, you had not undergone this process, maybe that doesn't, maybe that transformation you doesn't happen. Is there some communing with something there that is going on? Would you say that is unique?
Yeah, and the act of writing itself is really special. And I think everyone, no matter how bad or good you think you are at it, should take a swing at it. Write a letter to a friend, write a journal, something like that. Because when you get in that flow, when you start pulling things out of you, like, where did that come from? It's it's like the closest I've ever felt to being immortal, right? I know I'm not immortal, but the act of writing itself pulls things out of you that you didn't know were there. You experience a becoming of yourself, and it's just amazing. And so I have not done any other. I'm a hypocrite here because I've not done any other kind of art because I'm not good at it. Can't sing, can't draw, can't paint, can't. I can dance okay, but not like on a stage or anything. But when I can write, what is in Good Will Hunting? What does he say when some people see a piano they could just play? I felt
Yeah.
like I could just play, and so again, I'm very lucky. Maybe I am giving bad advice, but I do think that people find and will find a lot of joy in writing, even if they write and they just tear it up into itty bitty pieces and throw it away. It pulls something out of you. And I don't know, you asked about literature. I don't know if it's only literature that does that, but I bet creating does. And I know people who paint, I know people play piano, and they love doing it and they want to do it more. And so a call to action, do more, just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like you're sort of participating in self creation and self discovery at the
I may
same
have dodged
time.
your question a little, but I
No,
turned it
no,
around a
I
little.
think that was good. Do you worry about the future of creativity with AI and everything that's going
I
on with that?
I don't know where I saw this. I saw it somewhere on Twitter, which is one of the worst and best places in the world, to be honest with you. It's gotten pretty bad these days,
It's
but
terrible now, yeah.
um, somewhere on Twitter, I saw someone saying, "Why are you actively self-lobotomizing yourself?" You may have said it. It was someone like you, I think. It may have been David Z. Morris, who I worked with at CoinDesk, who's a great writer. Why are you guys actively self-lobotomizing yourself? It's certain things, like, you just be a human. And I understand you want to help, write an email, whatever. I was with a group of friends, and I'm putting them on blast now. I won't name them. They probably won't watch this, but if they watch this is a group of friends that live in all a bunch of different places, and we met in one central place, hanging out. And one of them said, "Ooh, I asked ChatGPT to create an anagram of 4 words of, what are you watching? What are you doing? What are you thinking?" Well, it's like, so you asked it to help create our conversation that we've, mind you, have been having for 2 days now, right? This is how friendships work. You start riffing off each other and things like that. You don't need to use it to be a human. And I went up to this specific friend. I sound like I'm trying to save the group, but I look at her and I go, there's a chat GPT up here in your head. It's beautiful. Use that. And the one thing that I think it's really damaging in doing is that people are mistaking it for actually, even if it makes one of those classically good sentences that might make you feel things, it's missing the human connection, because no matter how hard it tries, an LLM, all it's doing is guessing what the next word maybe should be based on all these inputs to make it seem like running through a field of daisies is a wonderful feeling. But does it know what it's like to run through and feel that elation? Does it know what it's like when someone you love dies? Does it know that pit? Sure, it can maybe describe the twisting, crunching feel, but do they really know that emptiness? Do they? And I think what we lose, and I'm being so philosophical here, but what we lose when we depend on it, I'm not saying don't take in the AI art. I can't control what you do, but when you do it to help create something that you should just be creating for yourself, I feel like you're doing a disservice to yourself as a human being. And this isn't a new thing to say. I get very worked up about this. This isn't a new thing to say. It's like, we create this thing that maybe can automate the super boring stuff you do at work, the rote stuff. And you're going to use it to write a novel or write a poem or to draw a picture or to make music. It feels wrong. I don't have better words than that than saying wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah.
It feels wrong.
Those are great words. I'm feeling fired up about that. So like, it makes me think like, another thing that I always quote on the show is like T.S. Eliot talking about poetry being, the line is I think the exact line is, he describes it as a raid on the inarticulate. But I always, in my mind, rewrite it as a raid on the inarticulable.
Nice.
Because I think it's actually what he means. So because I think there's some things that are so fundamentally human, they're just really difficult to articulate. Like you have to, so when you write a poem, it's really just kind of, I love thinking about it as like, it's a raid on that thing, that feeling, that ineffable, human, like you're taking a shot, you're taking a stab, you're riding your horse in the dark and you're trying to like reach this meaning there, and maybe you hit it, maybe you don't. But it's a raid on that. And it's hard to imagine like an LLM doing that. I also think, this is a little bit what you're getting at too, is an LLM is not going to, I don't think, break new ground in the same way. So like the types of art that is totally kind of shattering of a paradigm that kind of comes out of nowhere, like you can't just write Ulysses like ex nihilo, you know what I mean? You can model something off Ulysses now that it has been created. But you can't just, kind of without having seen it before, you can't, it was a human being that had to sort of think that up. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe LLMs will do that. I don't know, but I like to think that some of the stuff that just like explodes the universe a little bit and resets where we are, what the kind of the state of the art is maybe harder. But I don't know. I don't know. That might not be true, but I like your articulation way better about it. Just like it can write about like, what this thing feels like, but does it actually know what it feels like? Does it matter? I guess is a question too. I mean, I don't know.
We're talking about the human experience here and feeling connection. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe.
I think so. I think it does. But maybe, I hope that we don't. I view AI as kind of like I try to just to like sequester the uses in my life. Like I think it's extraordinarily useful for health stuff. Like you can do some very cool stuff with like your blood work and ChatGPT, and you can really like personalize. It sort of renders a PCP kind of unnecessary. Like you can just not. First of all, not medical advice. Let's get that out there. Not medical advice, but go see your PCP. But you can. It is very, very useful. You can get very personalized. But I think you do have to kind of draw boundaries. And I think it's actually more important, I think, for us to work out the human muscle while we have AI. Like it's almost an argument to just read more novels now in the dawn of the AI, because otherwise you're going to lose, you can gain a lot with AI, but you're going to lose some important stuff too along the way about yourself. So I think do both barbell portfolio of novels and AI.
Ooh, I like that. I will say, as a counter to the PCP argument, sometimes looking a person in the face who knows what they're talking about and then compassionately saying, you're going to be okay, is not the same as, the text on the screen saying you're going to be okay. So
That is true. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Yeah,
maybe we pay them for that. That's what we pay
yeah,
them for, right?
thank you for the pushback on that. That's good.
But it
I
is
want
good at that. I agree. It's good at summation. It's good at pulling things. It's
yeah.
good.
So I want to, and I'm being conscious of the time here. I do have a few more questions for you, and I
You're
know we
good,
could just
man.
talk forever, but
yeah,
um,
let's do it.
so there's a little bit of a movement in the Bitcoin world these days, especially younger Bitcoiners, I think, who definitely are more interested in reading. They're kind of starting to do that more, and there are these like kind of quote unquote Bitcoin novelists, Bitcoin writers, Bitcoin artists who are making art that is kind of either directly, explicitly about Bitcoin or is like an homage to Satoshi, um, or the like cultural totems, I guess, that we associate with Bitcoin. Like it's like the Matrix themed something, or it's like a V for Vendetta thing, or
Yeah,
um, I will say again, or it's Fight Club themed, which I will again say that Fight Club is a shitty ass book. And the movie's only good because David Fincher directed it. And
I
like,
love that movie.
yeah, the movie is good, but it's not good because like, yeah, I had this, we were talking with Terrence Michael. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but yeah, it's thematically good or
Yeah,
thematically bad, formally good.
yeah,
But anyways, you have art like that where Bitcoiners are doing, art that's just like about Bitcoin, or it's sort of an attempt to orange pill people by kind of making Bitcoin a really prominent part of the story. So I want to put that on one side. And then what you did is you were somebody who has worked in Bitcoin, who is into Bitcoin. I assume that part of your like financial life as a human being is you probably save some money in Bitcoin. The money that you haven't lost in a boating accident
that's right.
is probably in Bitcoin, so maybe zero. But so but your book that you wrote, I think importantly, is not about Bitcoin at all. At least certainly not explicitly. I think obliquely, there's some Easter eggs for people. There's a pub key reference in there for people.
Shout out Pubkey.
Yeah, shout out to pub key. There's the Great Financial Crisis, which obviously kind of inspired, sort of like created the environment that inspired um, the white paper. That is out there. That's affecting the action. And then there's some economic theory that gets kicked around too by the characters. But this is not a book that I think it would be doing the book a disservice to say it's a Bitcoin book. I would never describe it that way. I'm sure you would not either.
Yeah,
Um, I personally, I will say I am bearish on like Bitcoin art, quote unquote. Um, I am bullish on people like you who are sort of maybe empowered a little bit more than they otherwise would have been by Bitcoin, to go and create a book that is not actually about Bitcoin. But how do you think about that?
I want to say this without offending some people who are my friends. People I know, acquaintances who are writing those books, have written those books. It's not for me. I have sat and thought, when I was telling people I was writing a book, 100% of them who didn't actually know me very well said, "Oh, you're writing a Bitcoin book, right? You worked at CoinDesk, you're writing the Bitcoin book." Like, no, I don't know how to answer your question without kind of pushing away from really what you asked about, you know, are these Bitcoin books good, right? Are they good literature? Are they good for us? Should we go forward that way? Um, but I'm struggling with this one, but give me a second.
Yeah,
So,
I can soften it a bit if you want to.
no, I think I should answer it. I- I'll go back to when, I assume you've read a lot of the Bitcoin books, the classic Bitcoin books. How
Yeah,
many do you have to get through before you're like, oh, these guys are all saying the same thing? I know I said earlier, we're all saying the old stuff in new ways.
but what you're saying
Mm,
when you say the old stuff in new ways, it's different. Like saying the same facts and sort of laying down the same assertions in like slightly different ways, I think is different than sort of trying to illuminate kind of like old,
yeah.
facts, old, I guess, truths about humans and how we relate to each other. in new ways. Because I also think that what the old things, new things thing is, the old kind of, if we want to say something as bland as like fundamental human truth, there isn't really like a fundamental human truth. The fundamental human truth is that it's all kind of incoherent. We all kind of do our best, and we try to just sort of fumble our way through and ascribe meaning as best we can.
Postmodernist stuff right there, I think.
Yeah, which I'm trying not to be that way,
Yeah.
but but yeah. So maybe I don't know.
I want to answer your question. Can you ask it again? I want to answer this question.
Yeah. So I guess
I think it's
I
the
guess
crux of what the
yeah.
podcast is about.
I think what I like to see is I really do like to see this kind of bubbling up of interest in the arts. I think it's kind of there. It's nascent. It's like this burgeoning phase right now. Um, but what's interesting to me is that it's kind of focused on like Bitcoin specific. It's like we're going to make paintings that are about Bitcoin. It's going to make a Guy Fawkes mask and like a dollar on fire, and like or it's going to be a book a novel that is explicitly using Bitcoin as like a major plot point. And it's kind of like, oh, like this would be great to, and I am not. I want to be clear that I'm not like, I don't want to sound like I'm insulting that. I'm definitely not. Um, it's but because people will come to me sometimes, they'll be like, oh, have you read this? Are you doing this because you do this podcast? You're into art and stuff. Have you like purchased this picture of Satoshi? And or do you want to talk about this film that's about Bitcoin? And I'm like, nah, I really don't actually. It's cool. I think it's, that's a way in for people to learn about Bitcoin. Some people like to see, and there's some good ones out there. Um, but for me, what's much more interesting is I don't want to live in a culture. Let's just say we fix the money, which I think we're trying to do, and we start to think about re-architected culture after that. I don't want like the environment of the humanities, the sort of prevailing discourse to be, let's go to the museum and look at all the pictures about the money that we spend now. Let's all
About
read
money.
books about, yeah. And it's like, that's not, I don't think that's a thriving society. So I think those things are more like very niche relics. I don't really think it's culture. I think it's like collecting, I guess is which has its own culture, but there are people who be like, oh, Bitcoin culture. I like, you know, have all the magazines, and I have stickers stuff, which I like that stuff too. But
Yeah, me
I don't
too.
think that's like capital C culture. I think that's it's like a kind of like a niche collecting thing.
Yeah,
And I don't know if I guess my question would be like, do you agree with that? And do you think it's important that we think about art in a way that's not just, we can be Bitcoiners, but not sort of limit ourselves to art that's just about Bitcoin? Is that
I have,
important?
I have the answer now. So when you write these Bitcoin books, the same people are going to read it. The same exact people are going to rehash it on Twitter. And you're going to go on the same podcast, you're going to talk about the same book. It's, to sound very just like proud of myself, like I want to reach as many people as possible, and I don't want to keep saying the same thing to the same people, right? If this is going to become a broader thing, shouldn't we be trying to bring more people under the tent? Sort of, Bitcoiners talking to Bitcoiners is, you don't even have to have the conversation, right? Like, oh, I know what you believe when it comes to this and this and that. And you go to the Bitcoin conferences and everyone's saying the same damn thing on the stage all the time. It's like, blah, blah, blah. And you're saying people are yelling at each other in agreement. It's like, what are we doing here? And so what I think is worth spending time on is a lot of people who got into Bitcoin did so because they are very critical of the world around them. They ask why, they ask why, they ask why until they get to the end. And the end is, the logical conclusion is, just because that's how we've always done it, you're not satisfied with that. And so I think that's a really good way actually to approach literature. And so these people who think like that are able to then look at the human condition and be like, why? I think I know why. Do you think this is why? And that just has broader implications. And I think I can tie this back to maybe Kurt Vonnegut a little bit.
Please do.
He's like kind of a science fiction writer. He would probably say he was. He was a little bit of a satirist, kind of an absurdist. But for a lot of his early writing career, he was writing for pulp magazines. And science fiction was kind of not a respected genre. And the people who were reading science fiction were science fiction fans. And it was, this whole Isaac Asimov, and I don't know the two others because I haven't read. There's another three godfathers of sci-fi. I'm not very learned in sci-fi, but they were writing for the sort of the same audience. And when people like Kurt Vonnegut and probably more Ursula K. Le Guin kind of broke out writing things that are sort of sci-fi, have sci-fi elements, there's aliens, there's time travel, and things that like probably can't happen, although like infinite realities, like it can happen. And they're pointing at more fundamental human truths. And Ursula K. Le Guin especially is like, I'm going to use sci-fi to talk about this thing I really care about, anarchism. It's like really interesting to take anarchism to its logical conclusion at the end and say, we have these two planets. One is hierarchical. One is actually what anarchism is. And it's not, the purge where crime is completely illegal. And she brings that in a science fiction setting. She has this cachet about her because she writes beautifully. And the only reason she was able to like break out of the sci-fi, pulp-y era, and maybe she's a perfect example for, again, I'm not well learned in sci-fi, but I've read her books. So that to me is like, she broke out of sci-fi. She went for everyone else. She's like, everyone who's human, even if you don't like sci-fi, you're going to like my books. Again, very cocky. Like, I'm smart. My books are good. My sentences are the best. My ideas are good. Read my book. A lot of people did. And it's because she wasn't writing sci-fi for sci-fi. She was writing sci-fi for people. And so if you're just writing Bitcoin books for Bitcoiners, maybe this is making the other point where maybe I should write a Bitcoin book for everyone, but there's fundamental principles of Bitcoin, and I'm writing the book that's, like criticize the world around you and ask why.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Did I dance around enough to not offend anyone?
I think you navigated that perfectly. Probably an unfair question, but
I have some friends who are doing this, and
yeah, like
more
I
power
think
to them.
for me, what I guess gives me a little bit of pause about some of the, I guess, like, is I don't think if I'm automatically suspicious, if I feel like what if I'm reading something, I'm watching something, looking at something, if I feel like you're telling me I should think something about this, like you were coming into this with an agenda, and it's not the purpose the purpose is not to render an experience that I might find meaningful, or it is to instead to tell me something, or to convince me of something. There is a type of that, like if I wanted to read, like a I don't know, like a like an essay. If I was reading like Orwell essays, or like there's a point to the essays. Like that you can write a persuasive essay. You're trying to convince somebody of something. But if I'm engaging with a piece of art, I don't want to feel like you are telling me I have to receive it a certain way, or that you're already kind of committed to. I don't want to go down like an Adorno rabbit hole here, but yeah, so I get suspicious of that. I like when again, not to. I think that your book does a really good job of this. I never felt like I was being like yelled at, like something was being yelled at me. You know what I mean? It was like an experience that I was able to be inside of, and it was meaningful to me because there's enough trust put in me that like you don't need to tell me anything. You just need to show it to me. Let me stand here and watch it. Let me be in here, and just kind of absorb it.
Yeah,
and make sense of it.
I think that's what makes interesting writing. You say persuasive essays. I don't think I read those very often these days. I think it's really interesting to think about the idea of when you create something, you put it out in the world, it's not yours anymore. I know it is mine, and I will claim it. If this becomes big and popular, everyone loves it. It's mine, it's mine, it's mine. I'm selfish that way. But what you get out of it may not be what someone else gets out of it. It's a story about people. You're going to find reflections of yourself all across the damn thing. So, and some people like certain characters and some people don't like other characters, and I'm shocked. I'm always shocked. It's like, what do you mean you didn't like Roosevelt? What's to not like? He's the man,
Yeah, I felt like I could tell which characters you felt passionately about. Not because I thought the other characters were not read, but it was like I thought you like went into a different gear
Yeah.
on, like I think not to spoil anything, but in part 3 when you go first person, when you switch when you switch that up, that was like another gear. Like, and I think you were aware that you could do that with Liam because that was a character I think you felt really strongly about, that you could confidently make that choice and say, I'm going up. We're gonna do that. We're gonna play a guitar solo here, basically.
People who know me are like, well, that's you. I mean,
yeah,
exaggeration of myself, but
Of course, but it's that's kind of unavoidable. I think, Franzen has this idea where he's like, he loves to pride himself on creating these characters that allegedly have nothing to do, according to him, are in no way composites of people around him. But then I think his family has actually come out and be like, well, I don't, so, but anyways,
People are people. It's hard to create
yeah.
people. So, composite them, man.
I have like maybe two more questions for you. One is, I want to try to leave the audience with a little bit of like, if you're somebody who is wanting to get, if after listening to George and I talk, you still want to read books,
Sorry.
and which hopefully you do. But for people who have not read like a piece of, I guess, what they would consider literary fiction since high school, and I'm a big fan of rereading. I try to reread everything that I read in high school, like as an adult, as like a 37-year-old, because it's my wife. So the joke at my house is I'm just like reading Shakespeare all the time, like just rereading and reread. Um, but because I think it's valuable, you just get different things as like a 37-year-old than you do as an 18-year-old. I mean, like King Lear means nothing to an 18-year-old. It means a lot more to somebody with children. To say it means nothing to an 18-year-old, that is certainly not true, because when I was 18, it did mean a lot to me. But it hits different, as the kids say, at different ages. But so for somebody looking maybe to kind of dip their feet in, what are some books maybe that you would recommend that are sort of, and maybe we'll put like, you can give it maybe a Vonnegut recommendation, but just maybe some other books that you would consider to be kind of classics that are good. And I don't mean classics in the sense that like it's Charlotte Bronte. It can be Charlotte Bronte,
Yeah.
but if it like, I would consider like DeLillo's classic to me, too. So I don't restrict yourself to like 19th century novelists. We don't need to necessarily do Middlemarch here, but what are some, if somebody's looking for some recommendations of, hey, I want to get back into this, I want to expand my attention span a little bit, how can I sort of dip my feet back in here, before I read Don Quixote?
Yeah. Or, these days I've been reading a lot of Dennis Johnson, who
Do you know they're making a Train Dreams movie? Have you seen
I
this?
saw. Oh man, it's going to be awesome. He is someone that I think it shouldn't be your reentry, I don't think, back into literature, because he's like sort of your author's favorite author. But
That
yeah,
being
he's
said, for
excellent.
folks who like short stuff, who want to get, I mean, he does have some big stuff, but he writes some short stories collection. This is Dennis Johnson, Dennis with one N. Yeah, Jesus Son. I was going to say Jesus Son is very good. Train Dreams is like a novella. They're making a movie of that now.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Short stories so let me answer the question now. Short stories, I think, is actually a decent way. We have short attention spans. Short stories are a decent way to get back into it. The problem is, I have an answer. I'll have an answer for, you should try Ted Chiang's Exhalation, especially if you're, kind of, I don't know, if you're a Bitcoiner. If you have a Bitcoin interest, you're going to have some interest in sort of these sci-fi stories, and Ted Chiang lays out these really thoughtful short stories that are a little bit long. Maybe give a couple of those stories a try. I don't know how you feel about Ted Chiang. I think his stories are...
I haven't read it,
okay,
but I should, though. I will. I'm going to get it now.
I think that's a good short story collection. It's thoughtful, provocative, sci-fi. Like what if we lived in a world where you had to change out your lungs at the gas station, and that's the Exhalation story is about exhalation, right?
Interesting.
So I think maybe start with some short stories. Ted Chiang's a great one. I know I said maybe Dennis Johnson isn't for everyone, but give him a go. Give him a go. If you don't like his style, back it back up. And I mean this because he's someone who got me back into reading. Kurt Vonnegut writes in this way that is completely approachable. It's not, I love Cormac McCarthy so much, but you read some of these sentences and you're like, get to the point. And for someone, I don't know how much you love Cormac, I love him. The point of that sentence is that sentence, right? The rhythm of this sentence of describing the West. You're not getting there. You're going to go find Cormac yourself. But Kurt Vonnegut, something like The Sirens of Titan, I think is great. Cat's Cradle, I think is probably his best. It's very good, straight down the line of, there's Ice Nine, which is nuclear weapons, and what does that do to our society? I think Kurt Vonnegut, Cat's Cradle, and Kurt Vonnegut, Sirens of Titan is something that can get you right back into it because it's fun. He's funny. That's the other thing that I don't think people appreciate in literature, is that a lot of these authors are funny.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
because you have to be funny, man. You have to be funny because
Yeah.
there's dialogue, and people have said funny things to you before, and you can just throw it in there, right? You're stealing jokes. You're stealing jokes from like your grandpa, or a lot of Southern guys have these hilarious isms, and you just throw them in there. And so, what did I say? Ted Chiang, short stories, just to whet the appetite a little bit. Hop into some Dennis Johnson, Jesus' Son. I mean, look how thin this is. Some of these will change your life if you're looking for that, that spark.
The epigraph, I think it's, I always get epigraph and epigram mixed up, but the epigraph in that book, the Lou Reed quote from Heroin by the Velvet Underground, top 3 song all time for me. When I saw the title of the book, I knew nothing about the book when I first got it, but I was like, this is definitely a Lou Reed reference, and that song is so unimaginably good.
There you go. I don't know if you could see it.
It's we can. That song, so that's a Velvet Underground song. Probably not safe for work, I guess, just because of subject matter, but of the song. But it is profound.
Yeah, and it's about, I think reading things that are about these dispossessed people is kind of cool and fun, and I have nothing in common with these people. A lot of this is, sort of autobiographical things that happen to a former drug addict.
That's a useful thing about literature, though. I mean, I think not to get political here at the end, but what I think the left does really terribly is they all cosplay as like these working class heroes, like they give a shit. Most of them have absolutely zero adjacency to like working folks at all. I mean, so it's, I mean, I live and work in a small town. I represent workers as part of my job. This is not to say that I am like, I'm not like working on the railroad myself, but I'm just saying like, it is very easy to kind of like question and call out certain folks on the left wing. I'm just like, have you ever talked to somebody who you were purporting to save? Here, like, do you like you're kind of trying to script these people's lives for them? What I think a good way to actually inhabit that world a little bit is to read fiction. That is good. Is to, if you want to feel what it feels like to be dispossessed, I guess in certain ways. I think it's a useful exercise. To read some literature about it.
Yeah. A book that did that, and this is maybe down the road, but I think it's a fabulous book. I have a stack of books over here, talking about people you don't know anything about, have anything in common with. This bad boy right here.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Stone Cold classic, yeah.
I am not Black. I have no connection to really any Black people. I have a few Black friends, but this, it floors you. It absolutely floors you.
It's probably some of the, I would say, probably some of the single greatest sentences that have ever been written. You can almost, it's like sentence pornography. It's so good at like a sentence to sentence level that it's just
to the people listening, it's beloved Toni Morrison, by the way.
Yeah, you just gotta throw it at the wall sometimes. You just stop. I've never probably in a book to like stop so many times to just be like, oh my God, that was a sentence.
That one paragraph about the bow, the red bow.
Yeah, it's just
put it down, stare at the wall.
Absolutely crazy. Highly recommend.
You'll get there. That's the goal.
Beloved's hard though. I think like Beloved is it's a hard book. It's not easy to get through, but it's so rewarding. It's like listening to a symphony. It's just very
so that's not the question you asked. So let's forget that.
Yeah,
you guys aspire to that.
Yeah. Good. Well, those are some good recommendations for folks. Yeah, always trying to sort of like give people. I think the humor point is a good point too, because literature should be fun. I think people go into it with the attitude. If you haven't read it in a while, you're going into it with this attitude like this is this hyper serious thing. It's dour, it's very stern, and I'm just going to read Jane Eyre and just be bored to tears and humorless. And even Shakespeare is funny. Like there's so many jokes in Hamlet. I mean, it's just just remember these people are human beings writing these too. Like they are being funny. They do make jokes. If something is truly humorless, it probably sucks. Honestly, I'm not going to get into this with you, but one of my biggest beefs with Cormac, and I have some beef with Cormac, because I struggle a little bit. I don't know what it is. I struggle to get there sometimes, but I do find him humorless at times.
That's fair.
And that's probably my single biggest challenge personally, getting into Cormac. And I've read a handful of his books, but I struggle a little bit. I find the language tough.
It is.
In a way that doesn't always reward me in the same way that I feel like Beloved rewards me.
Yeah. That's my snooty author I like. When people ask who I like, it's Kurt Vonnegut and Cormac McCarthy, who people who know books are like, who are you? It's like that. Yeah.
But I do think people should. I mean, Cormac is certainly worth reading. I mean, I know a lot of people who just who love him and have been deeply, deeply moved by him,
Yeah.
which is not something that you say
He
about a
made
lot
me
of
laugh a
but
few times too.
yeah,
So maybe
buried buried in there somewhere.
yeah,
There's some jokes.
it's dense. It's dense. Definitely not an entry
So
level, guys.
yeah. All right, George. This has been awesome. My last question for you is: what's next? When is the second novel coming out? How can people follow you, support you? What do we need to do to get novel number 2 out? Where are you in that process
Novel
of
number
thinking?
2 requires people to buy novel number 1.
Which yeah, we will. People just please buy the book. Just
Link in the
go buy the book.
description,
Yeah,
all that good stuff. It's relatively cheap on Kindle and in paperback now. It was expensive as a hardback. I appreciate you for getting the hardback. $30 for a book with $5 shipping is kind of a lot to ask from anyone.
it was
So I
worth it.
appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. Paperback $16.99 and it's on Prime, so I know you guys have Prime, so
Yeah,
we'll
come on,
link
guys.
that. We'll link that. Buy the
Yeah,
book. Give me the courage to go on to the next one. I've been writing. So really what's happening is day to day, I'm working my job, you know, you got to pay the bills somehow. I don't have a Renaissance patron yet, but if anyone wants to do that, hit me up. I've been writing a lot of short stories just to keep the practice going. I have what I would call a collection of short stories. I'm trying to get them published. I got one published last year that I thought was pretty good.
yeah. That was the one that was in. Was that chapbook? No, what was that?
Matchbook.
Matchbook. I knew it was something.
Yeah,
Book.
yeah,
Yeah, Matchbook. Yeah.
which
I bet that was a good one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of magical realism, which is kind of my new thing where I like reading, you know, these Latin American authors. I don't think I have the chops for it, but I try it and it's fun. So I've been writing these short stories. I'm going to collect them. No one wants to read a short story collection until you're famous. So you guys can see that in 10 years. I told my wife I will start writing the next one, which she has, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit. She has urged me to go and write it in the first person in the similar style / voice of the third part of On Sawdust and Broken Glass, because she thinks, quote, that is what you're best at, which I guess is true. I don't know. She's my harshest critic, I guess, because at the end of the day, we got to put food on the table. So um, I'm toying with an idea that is more of a homage to Mr. Kurt Vonnegut himself and kind of inserting an absurd situation and having a main character go through it. I don't know. I don't like planning out books.
I
So,
was gonna ask, do you know when you start a book? Do you know how it ends,
oh
or are
no,
you?
that's by choice. Like I'm sure you've heard the gardener versus the carpenter argument, or it's like fly by the seat of your pantser or planner. The planner where you outline the entire book. You're like, this
I
is
think
the
Norman
shit.
Mailer did that. I think he had these like elaborate outline. I mean, Christopher Nolan does that obviously too.
Yeah, no wonder Norman's books are like 2,000 pages, man. Jeez, but like mapping out the shape of the story. There's a great video of Kurt Vonnegut talking about shapes of stories, but mapping that out before and doing just feels so much like work to me that it does like a becoming a beautiful thing. So I start with the situation and we'll see where the characters take me. Very Tolkien like, where I don't know. I didn't know who was going to take the ring. I didn't know how long it was going to take them to get to
Yeah.
Mordor, or
Or
things
it's
like
also
that.
like it's very Lewis. It's very like you were embracing the gift component of it. You're saying, "I'm going to trust this. Like this is going to
Yeah.
this will reveal itself."
So I have a situation that the characters put in, and we'll see where it goes. He kind of is able to see the whole timeline, but I don't want him to time travel because time traveling is lame and it's a crutch, right? You're like, oh, we can just go back in time and fix this, and it's that's boring. But like having foresight is kind of an interesting thing, right? They did it with That's So Raven, if you remember Disney Channel growing up. Um, I'm not saying it's that, but I don't know. I have a character who can kind of see the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and my situation I put him in is, and this is the third time I've talked about Jesus, but it's like he's at the Garden of Gethsemane, and um, what happens? Oh, Jesus, Peter cuts that guy's ear off, right? And then Jesus like puts it back on, and they kind of just go on their merry business. Like, dude, if my ear got cut off and it got put back on by some guy, I would lose my freaking mind. And
Yeah,
so I don't know. That's where I'm starting from now. We'll see where it goes.
I like that.
My long way of
Well,
saying second one's coming if you buy the first one, guys.
good. Yeah, and I cannot say it enough. We need more folks like you, George. So kind of bridging, the Bitcoin and the arts world, and just doing this good noble labor of creating these things. So please, folks, go out and like the book is not expensive. I promise you, it is worth your time, worth your money. Go get it so George can publish the second one, so that I can read the second one and we can all read it. And George, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm sure we could have talked for for a very long time. We'll have to do it again. I hope to see you in person soon, hopefully. But yeah, thanks for coming on. We really, really appreciate it.
Logan, thank you mostly for humoring me and letting me go in my diatribes, but thank you to your listeners too, and keep on fighting the good fight. This is good stuff.
All right, for everybody listening, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.